Hey friends, it's your favorite crafter at Black Cat Crafts. Today we are going to do an homage to the famous 12-foot Home Depot Inferno Pumpkin Skeleton. I am back after a short break. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but this craft is really cool because it takes the foundation of what Home Depot did and it makes it my own. So I mentioned I took a quick break. I was actually sick for a number of weeks and did a DIY bathroom with my husband. So here's what we did with that time that I have been out. We wanted a downtown bar bathroom for our basement. It's next to a 14-foot bar. So it really fit. We wanted to use beers of Old Milwaukee. So you can see the Pabst and the Schlitz converted sink handles. Blatz, that's the famous Valerie. Okay, I had to throw in a Harry Potter reference because y'all know I'm a big Harry Potter fan. The obligatory shower. That brick wall was a giant pain in my hiney, and so was the penny tile floor. Mega props to everyone who's in the trades. You have really hard jobs. So, the plan for my pumpkin skeleton miniature, of course, started with the Home Depot as the inspiration. But if you are familiar with my channel, you know that I really like to add in some pre-made items to speed up the process. I also like to break it down to find ways to make it faster and easier because we all have day jobs and families and things. So because it's not a copy, I wanted to add in some personalized elements. I love the smile on this pumpkin, and so I tried to do a version of it in mine. I also didn't want it to be super clean looking. So what's cool about what you see on screen there is that we've got those rotting pumpkin. I wanted to take those colors and some of those themes to put in to mine as well. So again, you know, not that what Home Depot did was wrong, but I wanted a little bit more dirt, grime. And then we have Bert. As a kid, I was terrified of his caterpillar eyebrows. Well, it's a unibrow. It's just one eyebrow. Yeah, he's scared the crap out of me. So I added eyebrows or unibrow that won't quit on this particular project. So again, one of my channel themes is make it your own, customize your DND Wargame train set Halloween village. So here's how we skip ahead, right? You start with some dollar store skeletons and a set of pumpkin lights from Amazon. That's what really makes this project move forward really, really fast because you get to skip ahead to really using the things you might already have, like hot glue and acrylic paints, a little bit of cardboard, and then some terrain elements, rocks, static rests, etc., to make this jump forward, to get not instant gratification, but very close. So step one is preparing those lights. They come in a great set. If you have knowledge of doing electrical work, of course, you could use LEDs in a different set. But this, again, my channel is more for the beginner. And so we'll start with pre-made items like this. So it actually is just a twist and a pull to get those removed. You will want to remove that light and that pumpkin for the final project. I left it on the video just for illustration purposes. So the body itself starts with one of these skeletons. And they are actually kind of a decent plastic for this use. So you'll start by removing the head, and then you'll want to build or bend the skeleton into shape. So if you recall, the original project had the skeleton's arms were reaching out. It's one of the things that really drew me to this project. You want to copy that by pretty aggressively bending your skeleton, and it will actually hold the pose very nicely. Later on, we'll use a little bit of hot glue to reinforce the position, but you'll definitely want to go in and bend the finger bones and the arms. Once you've got the top of the body in place, then you'll want to go ahead and do the legs as well. So from here, we'll continue with the body work. So this is where we're going to add the lights. So you can see we need 3 lights for this project at a minimum. You can always add more. One for each of the lungs and then one to light the pumpkin's head. So that's what you see there. The one on the right is the right lung, one on the left lung, and the one at the top is for the pumpkin head. So here's what it's going to look like. So of course you're going to have that extra cord. Wrap it around the pumpkin. As you recall, the pumpkin design that we're not exactly copying but referencing has vines all over it, and so you'll use hot glue to attach the cords And also add a lot in with the lungs. That will help make a diffuse glow with those LEDs. And you want to do it very slowly so you don't melt the plastic covering the wires. You'll also want to coat the skeleton in places where it will bend to fix the position permanently. So once you've got your skeleton ready to go, you'll want to work on the pumpkin's head. So you'll make a hole in the bottom wide enough to fit both the neck vertebra as well as your wires. And then you'll want to use a little bit of hot glue to fill in the hole at the top. You'll paint that later. From there, you'll want to use maybe a drill or a sharp knife to cut out the eyes and then the smile. So from this project for me, I did leave the nose so you don't have to. So for the smile, we're going to try to do something like this. Now with hot glue, this is the best I could get at this size because this is a rather small project. Those skeletons are not measuring, probably about 12 inches tall at most. So, it definitely took some finesse. I redid it a few times, maybe got a few burns, but I got that effect that I was looking for, where it was the very wet smile for the pumpkin. Okay, so we're going to do a lot of painting here. You'll definitely want to get that look with the vines, and it starts with some very opaque acrylic paint. So I know if you do a lot of minis, you're going to find that, you'll dilute your paints, you don't want to add texture. This is the exact opposite. Don't dilute your paints, add texture. And I start with a mid-tone color here. So what mid-tone means is it's the middle tone. Yeah, I know. And it definitely gives us a nice place to start. So when you start with the middle, you'll get the center tones. You can easily go back later and add highlights and shadows. But this is the majority of it will be about that color. And then I'm very carefully dabbing, again, heavy amounts, very carefully where I want the vines to go. Since it's not an exact copy, all answers are the right answers. That's the coolest thing about doing something like this is if you don't have the gift of being a fabulous artist with a lot of schooling, it's going to be challenging. So if you make it your own, you're always right. So now we're going to add shadows and highlights to the pumpkin. So I did just mention the piece about the mid-tone shadows and highlights, and here's where it's going to be really, really effective. So while the legs are drying, I'm working on the pumpkin's head. And it's hard to see because the light is off, but I'm using, again, a very opaque orange to emphasize the texture, the natural shape of the pumpkin. I'm adding it on very heavily, and I don't show it because it's honestly kind of boring to watch somebody else paint, but I do go back later, turn on the pumpkin, and continue to add layers of paint so it looks great both when the light is off and when the light is on. So best strategy here, put on a layer, turn on the light, see what you like, see where you need to smooth some stuff out, let it dry, come back. So this part is a little bit tedious. Just to point out what I'm doing on screen there, I am adding shadows under the, I guess you could call it the pumpkin's chin, the bottom of the pumpkin. For me, that adds drama. Now, as we know, if you study any light theory, it's lit from within, so it would typically be pretty uniform unless the pumpkin itself was thicker there. But, well, this is a fantasy project, so I'm deciding that I want it to look dark under there, and that's what we're going with. So later on, I did go back through, and like I said, I added some additional paints. I also tried to do blue eyes like the original, and I couldn't get the effect to work right. It ended up a little opaque, a little dark, and it just didn't, as you saw, there were bubbles because I did try to thin the paints, and ultimately I just took the paint off and decided it was a failure and went with clear. So I wanted to add the dripping, oozing smile, but I also wanted to add rot, and that's what we're doing in this particular step. So the pumpkin's totally dry, and I did dilute a very dark brown paint to start. I'm using dark brown and black for this step to get the true rot look that we're going for. It is a slow process. With this much water, it's nice because you can watch the paint flow into the recesses of the project, but there are times where you just don't get the the depth of the color that you're looking for. And so you do see me here going back, dabbing a little bit more paint here and there. Near the end, I actually just use undiluted paint to, again, try to do a little bit of wet blending and get the true effect that I'm looking for. So I ended up using, letting this dry, going back, doing tweaks. I just love these fantasy projects because you can start something, let it dry, come back to it a little later and go, oh, I want to make this, or I want to change that. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about this is you can keep working on it until you're happy with it. But it's also okay to just say, I'm done, and decide what you've got is good. So here's where I mentioned I came back with some undiluted paint. Again, I'm not afraid of adding texture to this project because I'm not painting a miniature figure where they have a lot of fine detail already, in the project that I want to retain. This is a fairly flat piece. When they did I'm assuming it's some kind of blow mold for the pumpkin, they gave him a very flat face, and the benefit to us is that it makes it really easy to paint, especially with something this flat. So now I'm giving the mouth a break and I'm working on the nose. It was a pretty perfect triangle, and so in this step, I'm again adding some rot, making it look a little gross. I'm not afraid of the bubbles that are there. They did dry in the project because of the way it is. I actually thought it added some character, but if you don't like them, you can just take a pin and pop them. So here's where we're going with the project. So of course, later on, I paint the eyebrows and the eyes. I didn't include that in this video because it's pretty straightforward, honestly. But I also added quite a bit of background greenery and scenery just so you could see how it could fit into some terrain for your campaign or for your Halloween village. So as we move forward in the project, we are going to look at adding the base and lights. So you'll want to, of course, make sure that you've got the right length on your wires. So I chose the two that were closest to the pumpkin because that worked for this design. You can think about whatever you want to do for the lights. So start with a small ball around the light. Now, this is a project that takes some patience. So you'll want to let it dry, just like I did there with video magic. And then you'll want to add a couple of small balls of hot glue here and there, and those are where you're going to build up the actual flame portions for the torches, if you include them in your project. So as you're letting one dry, you're going to add another one. It's best to be conservative. If you go too much, they will start to lean, and probably lean the wrong way for you, right? They'll lean trying to go with gravity, and you're going to want something that sticks straight up in the air. So I let those dry and then continue to build on them later, using the heat of the glue gun to kind of persuade them to lean the direction I want them to go. So you'll see throughout this project that I use the heat of the glue gun and the tip of it without really trying to add more glue to force the shape. That's one technique I really like to use to get these to go the way they go. So now I'm continuing to use tiny amounts of glue and then a stretching motion to get it to cool. That will help build up the flames. And of course, tipping it downward to let gravity do some of the work for me. Now the project is cool enough that I can touch it. Yeah, I've been burned about 1,000,000 times with hot glue. I'm pretty much immune to it at this point. But the stretching here could be done with some kind of, I don't know, letter opener, knife. That's how we start to build the look of the fire in the project. I'm adding a little bit of glue on the side because I'm going to build up that particular side, that particular flame, to make it higher than the rest. I really like a non-uniform look. I think it's more authentic. Even though we're doing a fantasy project and nothing has to be authentic at all, it can be whatever you want it to be. So we continue to build on the flame. As I mentioned, I wanted that one to be taller than the rest. And it's a project, this one is it takes a lot of patience, but it turns out fantastic, and I'm really glad that I did it. Okay, so now that that's dried, I'm going to continue to manipulate it. Here's where we get some of the fine detail that makes the end project really cool. So again, I'm using tiny amounts and a lift and pull method with the glue to help encourage it to cool more quickly. I'm also using the side of the glue gun to gently melt specific pieces of the project, either pieces that I wanted to pull in a new direction or like I just did there to shape. I felt it was a little bit round and I wanted to pull it out rather than to have it be lower down. So there's several different techniques you can use to get a fire look. So we've got a great start, and I'm going to add a little bit more glue to add even more dimension, and I'll pull that out to make it look like a flame. Again, you know, it wasn't as easy as the one step. It definitely won't be. I think this whole flame project with the drying time probably took me about 20 minutes. So you'll definitely want to set aside some time to make it work. But if you are really busy, you could make it look like you want it, at least for that step. Unplug your glue gun, come back to it later. So here I'm actually taking advantage of the fact that the glue is drying pretty quickly, and it's able to get those strings that you can hang on to. They're not hot at all, but they do help fight the effects of gravity to keep that particular part of the flame moving in the direction that I want it to go instead of sinking downward. Now continue to do different pieces, just like you're seeing there, again, to get the final details of my torch exactly the way I want them. All right, so now that we have one done, I'll show you what it looks like. It looks pretty cool. I did paint it a light yellow, and that's actually the next step. We're going to paint our torches to be reminiscent of what real fire looks like. So a couple of images just to show you what I'm going for, where it's lighter in the middle, and as it gets cooler to the outside, gets orange and then red. So once you've got the torches and your guide glued in place, you want to look at adding some interesting terrain. The rock is really important to help balance them out. So I did use a couple of rocks there, as well as some static grass of various colors until the base was totally covered. So here's what he looks like in real life. I'm really happy with this project. I had a great time making it. Thanks for joining me at Black Cat Crafts. I hope you stop by to see the various terrain that I do. Also, the scatter, the characters, and the minifigures. I hope to see you in the comments so we can hear what you want me to do next. Thanks and Happy New Year.